Hello, I'm Richard Berkeley and welcome to businessandfranchiseopportunity.com. The following videos in this series cover the questions you need to ask in order to make an informed and wise purchasing decision on the type of franchise or business opportunity that is right for you. Now to the questions.
Okay, so let's cover the first question. And Cheryl's asking, if I don't have all the money, is there any way I can finance, or is there anything that I can do in order to help myself buy into a franchise? So Cheryl, yes there is. Each and every franchise is somewhat different, and so I'm going to cover a range of possibilities, and some of those possibilities have to do with your ability, but some of those possibilities will also have to do with the franchisor's ability to maybe help you finance themselves. So let's talk about some of the first possibilities. Really, most of those are going to kind of lend itself to your background, who you are, what your assets are. Do you have connections, in terms of the lending industry itself? Do you have a current relationship with your bank? So let's kind of talk about some of the high points. First, and probably, the best method that I could really put you onto is family and friends, and they're quite often called angel investors. And why would you want family and friends or angel investors? Well, really, these people are going to be far more reasonable than any banking and or typical lending situation. And by that I mean, if you went to a bank and you were able to borrow the money, they're going to have set payment schedules. It may be $1,500 a month or $3,000 a month, depending on the size of the dollars that you're looking to borrow. Well, let's say you borrow from mom and dad, or let's say you borrow from your friends, or let's say there's good friends that you have in the past you went to school with that now have the ability to sort of maybe help you out and lend into this situation. Well, maybe there's no payment for this for 6 months based on the fact that you have a relationship, and maybe those payments will sort of step up. So that's why I'm saying there's a lot of flexibility with using an angel investor. So, but for everybody that's not possible. So let's look at some of the conventional methodologies that's available. Certainly commercial lending is one of the methods, and this would be a sort of a standard type of financing opportunity where you would go see your bank person, your bank manager, your bank lender, and hopefully you've already had a relationship and done some borrowing in the past. Now, I'm going to tell you the truth here today. There is a significant problem with commercial lending. And as we've all been probably paying attention, we're talking about a deep recession here. And really the banks, they also have a situation today where they need to get their lending margins back into ratio themselves. And that means, they need to have so much cash on hand at any given time, based on the amount of dollars they have lent out. And some of these banks are struggling to kind of get back into those margins. So, some of these larger ones may not be the choice, and they may be the first ones that pop to mind. But really a smaller bank today who probably didn't get, leveraged out like many of these large banks may be a better option. So if you have a relationship with one of those, you certainly want to have a conversation with them. Now, having said that, borrowing money from a commercial bank for a small franchise, that maybe you need $20,000, $30,000 or $40,000, really becomes burdensome. You're going to have legal and accounting bills of anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 to borrow $40,000. So it really doesn't make a lot of sense. So from there, let's skip up to other options. The next options is to look at specialty lending institutions. Some of them are community-based. President Obama has recently done some things with Goldman Sachs, for instance, where there's going to be some community-based lending, and I believe it was up to $500 million that was being put into this fund. So look into things that may not be quite obvious. They'll be less onerous, and they're really there to help small and medium-sized enterprise get started again, because the whole objective of coming out of recession is to get people back to work. So they're looking at lending into small businesses. The good news is, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, a franchise actually gives you a little bit of an edge when it comes to borrowing, because you have a business methodology that's already been proven. So there's another opportunity. The next thing is there's SBAs or SBLs, depending if you're in Canada or in the United States. And these are government institutions that have really been created, once again, to lend into this type of scenario. And quite often, a number of franchises that are out there today actually are pre-approved as a franchise of choice. So depending on who you're talking to, and then, we can certainly discuss this in another video, you could possibly walk in and go, look, I'm buying franchise A, and they're already pre-approved, as somebody that you will lend to, also subject to your ability. So even though they're pre-approved, you still will have to get approved yourself. So there's another avenue. Now, another avenue I want to talk to you about is the franchisor themselves. Quite often, and you can imagine, you've got a franchise, it's growing, it's doing well, and it wants to take on new franchise members. And so sometimes they'll actually help with the financing themselves. They may have arranged third-party financing through a group, but they may also carry a portion of this themselves. Now, I'm not saying in every case that's possible, but quite often it happens to be possible. So it's a matter of actually asking the franchises you're talking about. And one of the ways to kind of know this in advance is to possibly work with a franchise broker, which is going to be a subject of another video, but quite often they'll know the guys who will do some financing. So now, having said that, all financing is going to really be subject to who you are, the assets you carry, and basically your history in terms of credit. So there's a lot to this, but this is kind of an overall today, and we can talk once again a little more in detail in another video. Now, the last thing I want to mention before going on is talking about the CEO or the president of the company that you're going to be talking to. I'd like you to think about who he's looking for and the type of individual that he needs in order to make his business successful. Because if we're actually going to talk about financing, just think if you were the CEO of this company, and let's say your CEO or his franchise business was in the business of tax auditing, and you happen to be an extremely strong candidate, and you've got a great tax background, you've worked with large tax firms, you have a Rolodex yourself of 300 customers that you could call on. Now, if you can put yourself in that CEO seat and go, okay, I'm talking to this individual, they have all this depth, they have all this background, they're going to be extremely successful, but he's $10,000 short from making the purchase. Is he going to help you out? Highly possible. And so the reason I mention this is because if you can think about who that individual is and what he's looking for, and you can strengthen your case prior to that conversation, because at some point you are going to talk to the president or CEO of that company who's going to make the decision as to whether they'll help finance you, you make sure that you make yourself a strong candidate and let him know that you've got the skills, the background, and maybe the contacts that is really going to help your franchise grow. And if it helps you grow, it helps him grow.
Hello, this is Richard Verkley. I'd like to thank you for watching my videos. If you're interested in purchasing a franchise and looking for additional information to help you make an informed purchasing decision, I'd like you to come to my website at www.businessandfranchiseopportunity.com. Thank you.